anticipate a long night ahead of you?
No, I think JD will be able to declare victory soon. I am doing like a late hit, like at 11:20, just what's next.
Oh yeah.
On those governor's race and Senate race, and that'll be. I think the hard part's going to be like between 10 and 10:30 finding their sound, if it's getting fed in, if they've made their concession speeches.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're just going to kind of do it live. I'll give them a rough script of what I'm going to do, and they outcue to toss to whatever sound they get.
Yeah.
So other than that, I mean, that's the stress part. But it's, I think we were just maintaining our coverage. I don't think we did anything. We didn't go down to any of those, and it was hard to predict with the Senate race.
Right.
We got 'em.
Okay, Crane says he's ready, so we're ready when you're ready. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of 3 News Now. It is primary election day here in Ohio, May 3rd. So we've got your late updates between our broadcasts on what's going on with some of the major races around the state here in Ohio. So we can confirm to you now that the Associated Press has declared Governor Mike DeWine the winner of the Republican primary race to be able to run again in November on the Republican ticket for governor. And of course, his running mate will be Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted. That'll remain the same. Right now at this point, even with the obstacles that he's faced, he has a 60% approval rating. That's according to a Morning Consult poll. And he did have major bipartisan victory this past January when Intel announced that it'll be building 2 semiconductor factories in Licking County. Obviously, that's something that was good news for a lot of people here in Northeast Ohio. Bringing jobs to the area is always going to be a boost in those approval ratings. Other things that he did that made Republicans quite happy were signing the Stand Your Ground legislation, and then later a bill allowing citizens to carry concealed weapons without a permit here in Ohio. So in securing this chance to run again as the incumbent, he beat former U.S. Representative Jim Renacci, also farmer Joe Blystone, and former state representative Jon Husted, which now brings us to who will be running against him. Winning the Democratic nomination to run for governor will be Nan Whaley. She's the former mayor of Dayton, Ohio, the 56th mayor of Dayton, Ohio, known for the way she handled that mass shooting in 2019. That was on August 4th of 2019 when a 24-year-old shot and killed 9 people, including his brother. That person's name was Connor Betts. Betts was also fatally shot by officers after that. So she was first elected mayor in 2013. Now she will have the opportunity to run for governor on the Democratic ticket. She beat out John Cranley, who not only is the co-founder of the Ohio Innocence Project, which is a project in place to try and keep people out of jail for crimes they didn't commit. He is a lawyer and a politician. He is a former mayor himself, the former mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio. So Nan Whaley victorious in the Democratic primary to run for Ohio governor. Now that brings us to another seat, another contest that has had a lot of attention here in Ohio. So for that, we bring in 3 News' Mark Namick. Mark, thanks for being here with me today to talk about the Senate situation.
Yeah, good evening, Stephanie. And it is coming down to what people kind of thought. The cluster up top between J.D. Vance, that's the former author of Hillbilly Elegy.
Yep.
Thank you for getting that out. And an investor, and he came in kind of late to this race. And he surged in the end, even though we were well into early voting when he got his endorsement from President Trump. And that made a difference to him. But most of the candidates were running on the Trump agenda, promising to carry out his policies, with the exception of one, and that is State Senator Matt Dolan, who we are seeing kind of fighting it out for second place with former State Treasurer Josh Mandel, who was the first in and who was perhaps the most aggressive quarter of Trump's support and continue to portray himself as that. But that wasn't enough. I think J.D. Vance sort of towards the end was in that driver's seat, both with timing, momentum, et cetera, that helped him. And that is about falling where the most recent polls had them. I think Dolan has still been the surprise as the outsider who did not court Trump's support and is the only candidate in the 7 that admits and acknowledges that President Biden won fair and square the 2020 election. J.D. Vance and Mandel in particular have claimed that the election was stolen. Of course, there are no facts to support that. And Dolan was out on a ledge there, and I think he's pulled in some more of those moderate votes, and this will, set him up well for the future. This
has been a very interesting race to see as we try and see who will be vying to run on the Republican ticket to replace that seat. Hasten to say replace, not exactly replace. We know that Senator Rob Portman has chosen not to run again.
Yeah, so not seeking that third term, and it's rare to have an open seat, and that makes a big difference to people that want to get into that very exclusive club. I've been talking about that all night. It's only 100 people in it. It's got to be a pretty good place to be, and many millionaires using their money in this race, including Silicon Valley money. Backing J.D. Vance, and we're already seeing on the Democratic side with Tim Ryan, who easily won the nomination on the Democratic side tonight, trying to tag him as Silicon Valley Vance to kind of push almost that outsider view as Tim Ryan tries to portray himself as really the worker, the everyman, and we saw that already in his victory speech tonight.
Sure, yeah, interesting dynamic among those Republicans who were vying for this opportunity to run against who we now know will be Tim Ryan running under the Democratic ticket for this Senate seat. Well, we did see J.D. Vance did get the Trump sort of stamp of approval. Called him by the wrong name this weekend, though.
Hey, there's a lot of people running for Trump's endorsement. I guess that's pretty normal. Look, if President Biden had the same problem, stumbling over it, we'd all be over it. But I think that's par for the course. Trump is just so into this race, so into trying to pick winners. And really, he was going to have a winner with any of them except Matt Dolan because they were all behind his thing. So yeah, it's kind of a proxy for Trump, but in the end, unless Dolan won, it was going to be claimed a victory for Trump.
Sure, yeah, and we did see Josh Mandel did say when that endorsement came out from Trump for J.D. Vance, Mandel said, well, I hope to win his support when I run in the November general election. Yeah. So he's hanging on to that hope. But as you said, Mark, J.D. Vance definitely in the lead right now. Do you anticipate it'll be a long night before that call's made?
No. Based on where we're seeing some of the polls or the early returns, I think it's over for this race is over. I think we'll see people call it for J.D. Vance. There's, was waiting to see what would Hamilton County, that's the Cincinnati area, and that's where J.D. Vance is, but that voters there are a little bit more moderate that could have played into Dolan, but it's likely over. It's hard to make up that ground.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mark, for that insight. Obviously, stick with 3 News tonight. Mark will have the latest for us as those results do come in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll try to get sound from each of those candidates for you tonight. Not everybody is yet speaking out because the race isn't called. Unless something, but we're at almost 60% of the vote in, so I think it's going to be as we've talked about.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark.
Thank you.
Another important race to talk about, the race to decide who will win the 11th congressional district. Now, Shontel Brown is the incumbent in that race. This is the Democratic primary for this situation. Nina Turner lost to her this past November, but they have to run again. And the reason they have to run again is because Shontel Brown won that seat to fill a vacancy that was left by Representative Marcia Fudge, who was then moved to the Biden administration. She's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. So that term coming to an end, and now Shontel Brown is hoping to just win it outright in her own. So if we take a look right now at the returns coming in, I want to make sure I give you the latest results that we have. Right now in Cuyahoga County, there is about 16% of the vote in, about 89 of 566 scanners uploaded. So we're looking at the votes being counted there. And right now, Shontel Brown is leading over Nina Turner by about 68% to 31% of those votes. We'll be watching that very closely to see what happens there, to see if Shontel Brown wins the opportunity to run again to try and win that seat outright. But interesting primary here in Ohio when we're looking at the other races. These are the big ones that are these larger races with larger groups of people. But what we don't have on the primary ballot right now as we stand on May 3rd is we don't have any state house and state senate primary races. And the reason for that is because the redistricting issue has not been settled here in Ohio. The Redistricting Commission has not been able to put forth maps that have been accepted by the Ohio Supreme Court. So when we wait for that, then of course we'll have to address those issues of the state house and the state senate races to see who has the opportunity to run on those tickets come November in the general election. And time, of course, is getting short. That has been a conversation in the Republican-led legislature here in Ohio. And the day was not without its issues. There were definitely some early issues early on in the day. When polls opened at 6:30 this morning, there was an issue with the check-in process for voters. Our 3 News' Carmen Blackwell talked with Secretary of State Frank LaRose, and he told us at that time that there was no issue with people actually being able to vote, but it was the automatic check-in process on these iPad-type devices. He said at that time that there were backups in place, that they were logging things manually, electronically, the stubs that are attached to these tickets, these ballots, and also that they were being documented by hand, the old-fashioned way, by paper. But then at 8:10 a.m., we did hear from the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections that the issue had been solved. They were asking people who felt that they didn't want to vote and with that manual record-keeping process to come back to the polls and make sure that happened. So those issues cleared up pretty early, but again, rarely is there an election with no issues whatsoever. Of course, we do have faith in our electoral process here in Ohio, and those are the results that we have for you now here on the May 3rd primary here in Ohio. We'll be continuing to track these races. We have a live blog with key results on WKYC.com and our WKYC app, and we have our broadcast coming up at 11 p.m., which you can watch on the air. You can also watch it on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. So lots of ways to stay completely updated. And of course, we'll be tweeting out major updates as they become available. And again, we look forward to hearing more from Mark on that very hotly contested. It was a hot race for who will get the chance to run for that Senate seat on the Republican side of things. So we'll have more on that later. And that's it for your 3 News Now update today for this special primary election day edition of 3 News Now.